Hi, it's Paul Banis, GreatDad.com, and thank you very much for joining either the podcast or the YouTube version of the podcast. I'd really appreciate it if you took just a second to subscribe either on your podcast app or in YouTube. It doesn't really do anything. It's not going to send you any emails. It's just going to show up more often on your feed, and it does me a lot of good in terms of getting more exposure for this work I do to support dads. I'd also like to invite you to come to my page, GreatDad.com/go, if you'd like to discuss more about any of the issues that we are covering within the podcast, especially if there's any way I can help you to be a sounding board in your own struggles to be a dad and to be there for your family. So take a look at that. It also includes a link to my course on gratitude, where at GreatDad.com/gratitude with a offer to take that course for free. So see you in a second. Hey, it's Paul Banis with GreatDad.com, and here I am again with my weekly series talking to modern dads about fatherhood, and we've been just mixing up with lots of different subjects the last couple of weeks, and we're again changing kind of the routine from the strict parenting, how to parent, how to be a dad thing, to talking about financial literacy and the importance of that and how it dovetails with some of the things that you're doing within your family. So I've got an expert here, Barclay Roper. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here, Paul.
Yeah, so you've got a lot of experience both in financial planning. You're actually teaching as a professor to financial planners, so you've got a great background to talk about this. But what really, I want to talk to you about, because have had conversations about the value of financial planning, was this intersection of financial planning and your own personal values, the values you want to inculcate in your own family. And I know you had this experience in South America. You talked to me about it, that you spent 3 years in South America, and that kind of changed maybe the way you look at the world and our role in it. Is that true?
Yeah, I would say that's absolutely correct. As 19 when I first left and went to South America. I was in Bolivia,
Uh-huh.
in La Paz, and I was there for about 2 years. And I saw a lot of poverty. Poverty. I grew up in the Seattle area. I was middle class family, but I pretty much had everything I needed.
Hmm.
My parents gave me, a good life. And when I went to Bolivia, I saw a lot of people that didn't have, you know, uh, the lifestyle that a lot of us are accustomed to here in the United States. And I think more than anything was just that. I mean, these people are just as happy, as I was, or happier maybe, even though they didn't maybe have everything that I had and I was used to. And so I grew to love them for because they showed me love, and they accepted me um, when I was down there. And but something that I took away from that is there was an experience I had where there was a group of doctors that came down, and I saw them perform some medical operations. And well, I didn't actually see the operation, but I knew what they were doing, and saw the good that they were giving. And I thought, well, me personally, I was always a little bit more entrepreneurial minded, business minded. I wasn't going to go down that route of being a doctor, but I thought, I love what they're doing, and I love how the doctors are helping these people, and these people are helping them. Each person, I think, is being getting something out of it. And I thought to myself, at that age, I want to have this experience later in life. I want to go back, and I want to be able to give something back, and try to help out. But I knew I wasn't going to be a doctor, and I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. But that's kind of when the seed was planted. And the other thing, I think back on some of these people, they would work all day doing tasks, whether it's laundry in the river, and it would take all day, or going to get water, or just these tasks that we take for granted. We can wash our clothes and throw them in, press the button, and we come back later and it's done. And so I think to some degree is a little bit of that time management, good, better, best. What if we could give back and help these people elevate their lifestyle a little bit? how much better would they be, where they could spend maybe more time learning things that they wanted to learn, just like we get an education, most of us, here in the United States, and it's good. So there were a few of those things, those seeds that started to be planted in my mind. The connections weren't completely there, as a 19, 20, 21-year old, trying to figure this out. But then when I got home and got married soon after, my wife and I, we had this awesome opportunity to we worked for an organization, orphanage support service organization, and they sent volunteers down to the country of Ecuador, a few different locations, and because I spoke Spanish and my wife worked in social work, we were able to go down as directors. And so we were in our early 20s and went down there for a year and worked in various orphanages throughout. We were located in the city of Quito, and we worked. It's kind of like a temp agency in a way, because the volunteers would come down, we were there, and then we would send them to different orphanages. So 3 over here, 4 over there, and they'd go do shifts and they'd help out mainly with. I mean, we'd help all the different age groups, but a lot of the times we'd see they were understaffed with the babies, because there'd be 15 or 20 babies and 2
Babies are labor.
workers,
Yeah.
and needing to change diapers, feed them, play with them, really, because how important it is for babies to be held and loved, and how that really affects them, long term. So my wife and I had that experience in our early 20s, and we just loved it. We, to this day, 20 plus years later, we think back about it, and it was just a fabulous opportunity for us.
So that's really an important value for your family, is that service. I mean, built in just from that experience and the experience that you had really in your really formative college age years.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And the best part, or I mean, kind of a closing cap to maybe that story, and hopefully maybe not a closing, but something that can continue, is here we were, 20 years later, 7 kids, through a few different events that happened, that we were put back into contact with the same organization, orphanage support service organization, and because of COVID, some of their areas had been closed down for a few years, and they were looking to reopen the Quito area once again. And I was in a position where I teach online, and at COVID, my kids came home and are homeschooled now. And so we were in a position where we could go. I had one son who's in Brazil on a church mission, and so he wasn't with us. But my other 6 kids, my wife and I, we packed our bags and we headed down to Quito, August of 2023, and we committed to go help them open that area up again and live there for 6 months. And it was a beautiful experience. Was it easy? No. It's never easy. And with the kids and trying to learn a new language, and different things like that. But anyway, overall, it was just a wonderful experience that I'll always cherish for the rest of my life.
Yeah, well, I think people, if they focused in on the 6 or 7 kids, they'd first question is like, how did you have time to even think about giving to other people when you've got hungry mouths and that need to be fed, and kids that need to be loved in their own right? And I'm just really curious as to how you see that all fitting together, because I from what I can tell, I don't think you see it as like, okay, there's the people over here in South America and Quito or whatever, and here's my family. You're seeing some far more interesting blending of those 2 situations.
I think, and it could have been, whether whether it's in my subconscious or not, I think, I knew when I went down and had some different service experiences that it affected me in a positive way. And I feel like, and it affected my wife in a positive way. And we thought, you know what, if our children could have this same experience, I know it's different, but somewhat similar. And,
Yeah.
and it could affect them for the rest of their lives. meaning that they may choose to continue to give of their time or resources when they can. And
Mhm.
so that was somewhat of a motivation, to take our children down there.
Yeah, and I know what you say one of your mission or your uh your why is kind of is developing this financial independence so that you do have this opportunity to give back and to serve humanitarian causes. Talk a little bit about that is that like a family value statement, or is that something just personal to you? How does that work?
Yeah, I've been working on it as I when I was down in Ecuador here this last time. I kind of had this inspiration. It was on my bucket list to read a book. I'm not going to go into detail, but I mean, sorry, write a book. There we go, to write a book. And so,
Reading's a good first step, though.
yeah, that's a good step. So it had always been on my bucket list, for the last 10 years or so, but I didn't know, exactly what to do. When I was down in Ecuador, for whatever reason, I just felt motivated to start thinking about that a little bit more in depth, and thought about it and thought, I have this background. I'm not a medical doctor, but I have some knowledge that I could give, and that could affect people in the long run. I believe that, there's a lot of family breakups, or at least family stress, due to finance. And as a financial advisor, my past, for about 20 years, I saw that working with individuals. And I know that as a father myself, and as other fathers, where we have there, and just as parents, as mother and father, we have that stress as far as finances. How are we going to provide for our family, and how are we going to do things the right way and teach our kids? And so I thought at that moment, I can give something back, and I can write something that I think will be helpful for those new fathers, 20, 30-year-old new fathers and mothers that are starting out. And that was inspired, about a year ago when I was down in Ecuador. And my mission statement, or I guess I should say, my purpose behind that is basically, I I want to strengthen families through financial literacy and humanitarian service.
Mhm.
So that's what it comes down to. And so that's what whatever comes of this book, and the many people that I can help with it. I want to continue to do humanitarian service. Whether it's going down and serving in the orphanage again, or whether it's teaching individuals, pieces of entrepreneurship, or financial literacy, and things of that nature.
So have you seen in your American your experience with Americans and their financial planning an absence of that? You certainly do hear certain church groups who really talk about tithing and really spending money. I don't know if it's always just giving it back to the church or giving it to a humanitarian organization, but in general, a lot of people don't set up their financial plans usually set up for retirement, their kids' education, and then buying a cabin or some big, huge other monetary purchase that maybe doesn't necessarily add joy to their lives, but they think they have to have it. But did you experience people who maybe should have been focusing on how to get out from under the pressures so that they have that independence, so that then they can do whatever they want to do, and hopefully some of that is humanitarian service?
Sure. Yeah, I think everyone's situation's a
Right.
little bit different. But as a advisor, did we see that? Sure. Yes, we did. I saw both sides. I saw people that maybe they didn't have as much, but they were still giving,
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
monetarily in some way. And then other individuals that maybe had a lot, and weren't maybe doing as much as they wanted to do, right?
Yeah.
Or they were doing. So I definitely think that is something that we can all work on. But what I emphasize, at least in my book, and kind of working with individuals, is that money is great, and we should give money to if we have the resources. But even more than money, I think we can give our time,
Yeah.
and we can give within our time, whether it's actual, going out and helping somebody with, raking their leaves, or helping the next door
Yeah.
neighbor shovel their drive or something like that when it snows. I think we can give our knowledge also. And some people might say, well, I'm not a financial planner. What can I do? And I believe this with all my heart. I believe a kind word, an encouraging word to
Yeah.
help someone on their financial journey to become, financially independent will do wonders for people. Just if you can plant the seed of encouragement in a child or in a friend or someone, even someone you don't know, to help them, that will do a lot more than just maybe teaching them, a financial trick. And I really think that we can all learn the financial tricks, but what is even more difficult is having the motivation to be persistent, to see it to the end. And so there's a lot of mindset when it comes to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm interested in that whole concept of because I have a course in about the intentional father and trying to define the values you want to have for your family and then figure out ways to communicate those and develop them in those brief, 10 years you have between your real toddlerhood and adolescence. And I love your points about like I guess I thought you were going with a kind word. I thought you meant like kind word to anybody, the barista or the guy out working the lawn or whatever is just that basic kindness goes a long way. I mean, that's just one part of being uh, like a good human being. But so did you have that? I guess we've gotten the part about the humanitarian service and actually putting that into action, which is just huge and a great experience for your kids. They'll never regret that, I'm sure. But are there other values like that that you've developed for your family that you're actively trying to either model for them or give them experiences that develop those values?
Sure, values are really important to me. Um, I think number one, and maybe I said this before, but when we're working with our kids, whether it's in any aspect, but in financial literacy, we have to act first in the way that we want them to act. They
Yeah,
need to see our example. And so throughout everything as a father, I need to be the leader and I need to lead out if I expect my children to, become financially literate. So I need to live my life that way. If I preach frugality, then I need to live a frugal life. If I say, hey, we need to live on a budget, then I need to live on a budget if I expect them to.
sure.
And so those types of values. I mean, obviously, there's the basics, right? Integrity, honesty, trustworthiness, loyalty. The whole scout motto and scout oath and so forth. But so um, so
What
all of those are really important to me.
Yeah, don't underplay those. I mean, I think we think of them almost as cliches, but they're increasingly rare in our culture that people hold on to those values and really want to make sure that they are transmitted. I mean, people are taking shortcuts all the time. I just remember personally, we were at a restaurant. We were staying at a hotel, and they gave us a little glass vase that looked like a vase, but it was really a pitcher for the salad dressing. And at the end of the end of the trip, I don't know why, it got thrown in our bag or something. Maybe it's still a dressing, and wife wanted to save it or what. But we got home, and our daughter looked at it. She just saw us pulling it out of the bag, and she said, "Didn't that belong to the hotel?"
Mhm.
And she was like 6. She wasn't looking for a lesson, but all I could think of was, I failed that day. I mean, it wasn't anything big. It wasn't like she was going to learn how to, steal billions from the government or something, but
Sure.
it was still that same lesson where they are always watching you. And if you, like you say, if you want to teach them frugality, you don't go out spending, $10,000 on a boat on a weekend just on a whim. You teach them how to create plans and save and, get the things they want out of more than just crazy spending.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I think something that also I think is important. What happens if you don't have a father that teaches you these things, or a mother?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
If you don't have parents that do this, well, I also want individuals to know they can break the cycle. So, if you have a parent that doesn't have, good financial literacy, they're not doing everything that maybe they should be doing financially, that doesn't mean you can't change. You have free agency, you have a choice, and you can free yourself from, whatever bad choices your parents made. You can still you know, make a difference.
So are there tools that you recommend for doing that? I mean, I found that it was hard to get the kids to like learn about the stock market or try to focus on some of that stuff because it gets really complicated really fast
Mhm.
to them. My son even went through like a 6 week training program with Ray Diallo, who did a live session for kids on how the stock market works. And he was kind of interested in for a while, but I don't know how much of it really took because it's heady stuff. But
How old was he?
he was in high school. He's like 16. Yes,
16. Okay.
old enough to understand, but
Mhm.
not old enough to have any money. But are there any things like that that are kind of gateway things that are fun ways for them to develop a budget? I guess setting an allowance and saying, you got $5 or whatever it is a week, and spend it the way you want to. You get to choose, but figure it
Mhm.
out. But are there any other things like that that are very hard to do, but can get your kids on the right path?
I think that I mean, there definitely are. There are things that are out there. I think one of the funnest things that I've done is and it's a little bit more maybe on the entrepreneurial side, but it's sitting down and talking about business ideas with
Oh
my
yeah.
kids. I have,
Yep.
some that are a little bit more interested, and it is an age thing depending on, I see right when they're about 12 to 12, maybe a little bit early, but 12 to 14, they're really interested in working with dad on thinking up ideas about, business and things like that. And so I have the opportunity to take time with them and kind of explain to them, well, what is a business, profit loss, what are we trying to do? And that kind of segues into the budget. Hey, we have a certain amount of money we can spend, this and that. So I think for me, that's been really fun, and seeing them think of ideas to try to earn money.
Hmm.
And I think we always need to be really creative. Kids are creative. I love to be creative. And that's just something I've enjoyed doing with my kids and talking to them about it. But I do think instead of giving an allowance, we should have them earn the money. I think a lot of the times, even if it's something very simple, like help me take out the garbage, or they're doing something for that money. I don't think we should ever give kids, besides their birthday, I don't know, a gift from grandma, whatever. But we shouldn't teach them that we're just going to give them money all the time.
Yeah.
I find that kids that just get money, they tend to spend it more recklessly. They don't appreciate it as much as someone who earns it. Even if they have to just do something simple. I remember my oldest son, he's now 20, almost 22, and he wanted a costume. He was into some comic character, and he wanted this costume. And we said, all right, well, let's sit down and figure out, well, how much does it cost? All right, well, let's have you do, these things for the next few weeks. And he did it, and he got his costume, but he learned something a lot more from doing that. He learned that he could make a choice, and he could accomplish something, and then he could earn what he wanted. And I know life isn't always as easy as that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
he learned some principles, and it's served him well as he got older and was working and things like that. So
Yeah, this is an interesting subject because first of all, it's really hard to constantly modulate and change your behavior based on where the kid is. So, what worked last year doesn't work necessarily this year. But I've talked to other people about the whole philosophical underpinnings of different ways people do that. Some people they tend to be more socialists that were we pass out the money and everybody kind of works according to their abilities and their needs, and we just expect you to do that as part of our commune, which we call a family. And then the other part is where we actually pay you for every task, like the ultimate in the capitalist system. And then there's something in between, like we didn't actually give allowances. We kind of like approved things as they went along. The kids weren't profligate spenders at all, but then they were paid for like washing the car, or they got a Spotify membership because they promised
sure,
to
yeah,
wash the car. But every parent, I think, has to figure out, based on their own how they believe humans function and are rewarded, and sometimes how kids are rewarded. Kids aren't always the same either. One kid's
that's
like, I'm not washing the car. I don't care whether you give me $100 or not. I'm just not doing that. And whereas another kid would say like, oh, I get it. That's part of our family. I'll go out and wash the car on a Saturday.
yeah.
Yeah. Did you see that? Because you got 7 kids.
Oh
You must
yeah,
have seen a big difference in their personalities.
Yeah, I mean, our like anyone, I mean, that's truthful. Our family is not the, every child is different, and it's been a work in progress, and we're still trying to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
We're doing the best we can. These are just overall arching principles that we
Yeah.
try to live by and try to instill in our children, knowing that we're not perfect, they're not perfect, and we're doing the best we can.
Yeah. Well, I think there are there's those unknown things that you it comes from your perception of how the world works, and then the other things that are like basic. I mean, like I don't know what the answer is for how to reward your kids or allowance versus payment, all that stuff. I maybe we did different things, but I don't know what the real best way to do it if there is one for every kid. But I do know the fact that teaching those values and modeling those values and finding ways to repeat those values, that definitely does work.
Yeah, and between my wife and I, I think we have decided to try to give our children as much choice as possible, because at some point we're trying to prepare them to be
Mm,
parents, to
yeah,
be on their own someday, and to go out and
sure.
have a family of their own. And so I think the more we can give them the opportunities to choose, even if they fail, now is a better time to learn, especially with money, to fail now using with small amounts versus later with larger amounts. And so I really think, I mean, at least for us, that's been something that our kids have even come back. Some of our older kids that are, out of the house now have said, we really appreciate you not, maybe micromanaging us, giving us some choices, giving us some air to say, do what you want, try, obviously we're not going to let them hopefully make horrible decisions, or at least coax them in one way. But they've given us that feedback saying, "Hey, thanks for letting us make some choices and live our life." Kind of growing up, not feeling like you were telling us everything we had to do.
Yeah. It's easier at this age for to see your kid go out and blow $100 on some dumb video game or something that you really don't care much about. And but I mean, it's not the end of the world. It's not like they lost the family home or anything. But later on, when they get older, and you give them money, and then they come back with a tattoo or a new piercing or whatever, and you're like, I thought I was giving you money so you could have some other experience. That was not the kind of experience that I was expecting. That's when it gets a little bit more a more interesting conversation of how
Yeah.
money works when you're passing it on to your your kids. So, was anything else that you can tell us about the humanitarian value? I mean, I think a lot of people think go work in the soup kitchen,
Mhm.
go to your church, there are food banks, there are all kinds of opportunities like this. Quite often, it's hard for parents to say we're going to carve out that time because they don't. I guess they don't. Maybe it's hard to understand like that isn't just like an hour or two or an evening lost. It's an experience gotten.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and do you have words of advice for parents about or, or motivation for parents to find that time because of the value? It's not the same as going to Disneyland, but
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I have two thoughts. And the first one is, the more time you spend with your children, the one-on-one time, or if even it's a group, I think
Yep.
the better they'll be in the long run. I
Yeah.
mean, my goal, I mean, one of my hopes, maybe not a goal, my hopes, and it just has been that way so far, is I want to have relationship with my children even after they're out of
Oh
the
yeah.
house.
Yeah.
I want to be their best friend,
Yeah.
and I want them to be my best friend. And the only way that's going to happen is by spending time with them.
Yep.
And you said, you made the second point. You said, hey, we could go to Disneyland, but that's not the same. And I agree with you. I think there's a time to go to Disneyland, right? Right. There's a time to go do things like that. But I'll promise you, listeners, that if you spend time doing service with your children, it will pay dividends that you might not be able to really explain, in their attitudes, in the way they grow up, and have that desire to be kinder. They're more empathetic, and they're just, they're not so much thinking about themselves as much as now changing and thinking more about other people. And in my experience, the greatest joy and this is you know, it might not make sense. You'd think that if we spend more time thinking about ourselves and how we can make ourselves happy, we'd have greater joy. But the true reality is this, Paul: the more time we spend thinking about other people and how to lift them up, the greater our joy is in
Yeah.
life.
Well,
So
that's a great way to close this out, and I hope we motivated at least one dad to think more about how they
mm,
incorporate more of this into their lives, because like you said, it's just so important, and it is the way to happiness, is a combination of gratitude and service to others, and you realize that more as you get older. Maybe it isn't as apparent when you're in your 20s, but when you get older, you do appreciate how much of that is very, very true. So Barclay, I know your book is coming out. Your website isn't out right now, but is there a way anybody could find you if they wanted to talk to you now, or will that be for a future time?
you know, I guess it'd be a future time.
All right. Well, I
But
won't, yeah.
but like I said, um they can get me on, I guess Facebook or LinkedIn.
Okay, great.
No, it's under Barclay Roper.
Okay.
But mhm.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for taking time this afternoon. For my part, you can find my coaching offerings, including courses on being an intentional father. I've got a free course for podcast listeners on developing gratitude and the scientific underpinnings of how that is linked to what we sort of call happiness. And I encourage people to take advantage of that. And you can find that at GreatDad.com/go. So until next time, stay strong.
Okay, see ya.